The year is 2023. An office on a farm in rural Iowa. Sunlight cuts through the window. It illuminates dust motes dancing in the air. A young man, maybe 30, sits at a heavy oak desk. Across from him is a journalist from a major agricultural magazine. The journalist is named Frank. Frank is in his late 50s. He has seen everything. He has written about corporate farms. He has written about biotech. He has seen boom and bust. He has seen drought and flood. He has seen fortunes made and lost on the price of corn. He thinks he knows this story. He is looking at a spreadsheet on a laptop. The numbers glow on the screen. Acreage, yields, gross revenue. They are impressive numbers, world-class numbers. But that's not what makes him pause. It's a different column. Input costs. He squints at the screen. He leans closer. The number is so low it looks like a typo. Frank looks up from the laptop. He looks at the young man whose name is Leo. Leo is the third generation on this land. Frank says, "This can't be right. Your equipment maintenance, your depreciation schedule, it's a fraction of what it should be. Your debt service is 0. There is no line for debt service." Leo just smiles, a quiet, knowing smile. He doesn't say anything. He just nods toward the window. Frank follows his gaze. Outside, parked in a long, neat row, is a line of farm machinery. But it's not green. It's not red. It's not blue. The machines are silver, and they are old. Or they look old. Gleaner combines from the 70s and 80s. But they gleam as if they just rolled off the assembly line. They are spotless, modified, reinforced. Frank feels something he can't quite name. It feels like he just discovered a secret hidden in plain sight. He says, "How? How are you running a 3,000-acre operation with museum pieces?" Leo leans back in his chair. The chair creaks. It's an old chair. He says, "Grandma did it differently. She had to. They told her she couldn't." Frank looks back at the spreadsheet, then back at the silver machines. The numbers didn't lie. The machines didn't lie. Someone had told a story here, a story that began with a refusal, a story that rewrote the rules of farming, 1 acre at a time. This channel tells the stories of people who were told no, the ones who were written off, the ones who proved the world wrong not with words, but with work. If you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to this channel, because the story of Sarah Schmidt is one you need to hear. Let me tell you what happened. The year is 1993. The place is the same farm, but it feels different, smaller, more fragile. A hard winter had just passed. A wet spring was coming. Sarah Schmidt was 22 years old. She stood in the office with her father, Michael. Michael was 55, but looked 70. His hands, once strong enough to fix any engine, now trembled slightly. A doctor in the city had used words Michael didn't understand, but he understood the meaning. His time in the field was over. The farm was in debt, not drowning debt, but suffocating debt. The kind of debt that lets you breathe, but never deeply. The bank owned a piece of them. The equipment dealer owned another. Every decision was filtered through interest payments. Their main combine, a John Deere from the late 80s, had died at the end of the last harvest. A catastrophic engine failure. It was now a 200,000-pound paperweight in the barn. They needed a new one. Or a newish one. Which meant more debt. A lot more debt. So they went to the John Deere dealership in town. The place smelled of new tires and fresh paint. And money. The salesman was a man named Mr. Henderson. Frank Henderson. He was a pillar of the community, coached Little League, served on the church board. He had sold Michael his first tractor. He was a good man, a kind man. He sat them down in his office, offered them coffee. He spoke in a low, reassuring voice. He had a solution. A brand new John Deere 9600. A beautiful machine. green and yellow, the color of money, the color of success. It had a chopper, a yield monitor, GPS. It was the future. The price was $200,000, a number that felt like a physical weight in the room. Mr. Henderson slid a piece of paper across the desk, a loan application. He said, "We can make this work, Michael. The bank will finance it. John Deere Financial. We'll roll your existing debt into it, one payment. It will be tight for a couple of years, but this machine will pay for itself." He looked at Michael. He saw a tired, sick man. Then he looked at Sarah. He saw a girl playing farmer. He smiled a kind, fatherly smile. He said, "This combine will give you peace of mind. It's the only way forward." Michael picked up the pen. His hand shook. He looked at Sarah. He was ready to sign, ready to surrender to the inevitable. And Sarah said a single word, "No." The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights. Michael stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. Mr. Henderson's smile faltered. He said, "Excuse me?" Sarah's voice was quiet, but it was steady. She said, "We can't sign that. We can't take on that much debt. It would break us." Mr. Henderson leaned forward. His kindness became something else, certainty. He said, "Sarah." He used her first name like a tool, to remind her of her age, her inexperience. "Sarah, I have been doing this for 30 years. I have seen farms like yours fail. They fail because they are undercapitalized. They try to get by with old equipment. They fall behind. This isn't a choice. This is survival." He believed it, every word of it. He was trying to help. He was trying to protect them, from her bad decision. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, not by a rival, but by someone who genuinely believed they were protecting you. Someone who thought your ambition was a danger to yourself. That is the kindest cut of all. It doesn't leave a scar you can see. It leaves a question inside you. Are they right? Tell me about a time someone's certainty about your limits tried to stop you. Drop it in the comments below. Because what Sarah did next started a quiet revolution. Michael did not speak on the ride home. The silence in the truck was heavy, accusatory. When they pulled into the farmyard, he finally turned to her. His face was pale with anger and fear. He said, "You just killed this farm. You just threw away our only chance." Henderson was trying to help us. He walked into the house. The screen door slammed behind him. The sound echoed in the quiet yard. Sarah stood by the truck. She felt the weight of her father's fear, the weight of Mr. Henderson's certainty. She walked to the old barn, the one her grandfather built. The air inside was cool and smelled of dust and old oil. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the siding. In the back, under a canvas tarp, sat the relics, her grandfather's machines. A Farmall tractor from the 50s, a pull-behind plow, things nobody used anymore. She found his old workbench. In a drawer, beneath a pile of rusted tools, were his farm ledgers, hardcover books, bound in black. She opened one. The year was 1934, the height of the Depression. Her grandfather's handwriting was neat, precise. Every expense was logged. Seed, $10. Fuel, $5. A repair to the tractor, 50 cents. Every bushel of corn sold was recorded. Every dollar of income. She flipped through the pages, through the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. The farm grew. He bought more land. He bought bigger equipment. But one thing was constant. There was no debt. Not a single entry for a loan payment. Not once. On the inside cover of the last ledger, from 1972, the year he died, her grandfather had written a short sentence. She traced the words with her finger. "The dirt is enough. Don't owe any man. The dirt is enough. It wasn't just a philosophy, it was a financial strategy. It was a promise of freedom. The freedom from asking for permission, the freedom from a man like Mr. Henderson, no matter how kind he was. Sarah closed the book. She knew what she had to do. She went back to the house. Her father was at the kitchen table, staring into a cup of coffee. She placed the old ledger on the table in front of him. She opened it to the page with her grandfather's writing. Michael read the words. He didn't look up. Sarah said, "Grandpa did it. He survived the depression without a bank loan. We can survive this." Michael finally looked at her. The anger was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. He said, "Times are different, Sarah. You can't farm with museum pieces." She said, "I'm not going to. I'm going to buy a combine." He said, "With what?" She said, "With the money we have. All of it." The next morning, she drove to a farm auction 3 counties over. She walked past the rows of new, shiny equipment, the big green combines, the big red tractors. She went to the back row, the place they put the junk, and there it was, a 1978 Gleaner L2 combine. It was not beautiful. The silver paint was faded and peeling. There was rust on the auger. The tires were cracked. A sign on the window said, "Runs, but needs work." That was an understatement. It was a wreck. But the engine was a Deutz diesel, air-cooled, simple, reliable. Her grandfather had sworn by German engineering. The body was simple too. No complex electronics, no proprietary software, just belts and chains and pulleys. Things a person could understand. Things a person could fix. The auction started. The big machines went for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Farmers bidding against each other, taking on more debt. Finally, they got to the Gleaner. The auctioneer started the bidding at $10,000. Nobody said a word. The farmers looked at it and laughed. It was a relic, a boat anchor. The auctioneer dropped the price to $8,000. Silence. $5,000. Sarah raised her hand. $5,000. The auctioneer looked at her, surprised. He said, "5,000 from the young lady. Do I hear 6? Silence. The other farmers were looking at her now, some with pity, some with contempt. Sold. For $5,000. To the girl in the back row. She paid for it in cash. The last of the farm's savings. It took 2 days to get it home. It broke down twice. When she finally pulled it into their yard, her father came out of the house. He walked around it. He kicked one of the tires. He looked at the rust. He looked at the worn-out belts. He looked at his daughter. He didn't say a word. He just shook his head and went back inside. That was the beginning of the rebuild, the beginning of her education. She spent the rest of that spring and summer in the barn. The Gleaner became her world. She started by taking it apart, piece by piece. She labeled every bolt, every bracket, every hose. She laid them out on the concrete floor in neat rows. She bought a set of mechanics manuals online, thick books with faded diagrams. She read them at night until her eyes burned. She learned about hydraulic systems. She learned about electrical wiring. She learned about the intricate dance of the threshing cylinder and the straw walkers. She found a company in Kansas that still made parts for old Gleaners. She ordered new belts, new bearings, new chains. She paid for them with the money she made selling off scrap metal from the old barn. Cash. Her hands became calloused, stained with grease and oil. She broke knuckles. She burned herself on hot metal. She learned to weld. An old neighbor, a retired mechanic named George, saw what she was doing. He came over one afternoon. He watched her struggle to fit a new bearing. He didn't offer advice. He just picked up a wrench and started helping. He never said he believed in her. He just showed up. Every day. For the rest of the summer. They worked in comfortable silence. The silence of shared purpose. The silence of metal on metal. Her father watched from the house. At first he stayed away. Then he started bringing them coffee in the morning. Then he started pointing things out. A loose wire. A worn pulley she had missed. He never admitted she was right, but he started helping. They didn't just rebuild the machine, they improved it. They reinforced the frame. They rewired the entire electrical system to be more robust. They modified the grain head to handle the specific variety of corn she planned to plant. They made it stronger, simpler, more efficient. It was no longer just a 1978 Gleaner L2. It was Sarah's machine, built for her land. Built for her way of farming. By late September, it was done. The engine roared to life, a deep, throaty rumble that shook the barn. It was ready. Harvest was coming. The neighbors watched. They talked at the co-op. They talked at the diner. Michael Schmidt's girl lost her mind, trying to farm with a piece of junk. She'll be lucky to get half her crop out before the snow flies. Mr. Henderson from the dealership drove by the farm one day. He slowed his truck. He saw the old silver combine sitting in the yard. He shook his head, a look of genuine pity on his face. He thought he was watching a tragedy unfold. He thought he was watching a farm die. He was wrong. This is where the story becomes bigger than one person. This is where a single decision starts to change everything. The first harvest was not easy. The old gleaner was slow. It broke down 3 times. A hydraulic hose burst. A belt snapped. The unloading auger jammed. Each time, Sarah and her father fixed it. Right there in the field. With the tools they carried and the spare parts they had stockpiled. They didn't have to call a dealer. They didn't have to wait for a service truck. They didn't have to pay $1,000 for a technician to plug in a laptop. They just fixed it. And they kept going. They got the crop in, all of it. When the last bushel of corn was in the bin, Sarah sat down at the kitchen table. She did the math. The yield was good. The price was decent. Her expenses were almost nothing. No combine payment, no interest, no service contract. That year, for the first time in a decade, the farm made a real profit. Not a big profit, but it was theirs. Every penny. She slid the ledger across the table to her father. He looked at the final number, a small black number at the bottom of the page. He looked at it for a long time. Then he looked at her. And for the first time since that day at the dealership, he smiled. He said, "Your grandfather would be proud." That winter, she bought another broken Gleaner L2 at an auction for $3,000, cash. She used it for parts. The next year, she bought the 80 acres to the north of them. The owner was retiring. He wanted to sell to a young farmer, not a corporation. He gave her a good price. She paid him in cash. The neighbors started to notice. Her fields were clean. Her yields were as good as theirs, sometimes better, and she wasn't driving a new machine every 2 years. She was driving the same old silver combine, now with a fresh coat of paint. The talk at the diner started to change, from pity to curiosity. How is she doing it? Some of the older farmers understood. They remembered a time before massive debt was normal. They remembered the freedom of owning your own equipment outright. George, the retired mechanic, became her biggest advocate. He'd sit at the diner and listen to the doubters, and he'd just say, "The girl knows what she's doing. She understands the metal." By 1998, 5 years after she bought the first gleaner, the farm was debt-free. The bank loan was paid off. She drove to the bank and handed the manager the final check. She didn't make a speech. She just said thank you and walked out. Free. The expansion accelerated. Year 7, 2000. She bought another 160 acres from a family that was moving away. Cash. She bought a third gleaner. This one was a newer model from the 80s, an R62. It was also broken. She rebuilt it that winter. She now had a fleet of 3, each one optimized for a different crop: corn, soybeans, wheat. Year 10, 2003. The farm crossed 1,000 acres, all paid for. She started experimenting with no-till farming. It was better for the soil, and it saved fuel. Her input costs dropped even lower. Her profit margins grew. She was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. She became a quiet leader in the community. Young farmers started coming to her, not for advice about loans, but for advice about welders, about hydraulic pumps, about how to read a schematic. She never turned anyone away. She'd open her workshop, share her knowledge. She was teaching them the language of self-sufficiency, the language her grandfather knew. The dirt is enough. Year 15, 2008. A financial crisis gripped the country. Commodity prices crashed, fuel prices soared. Farmers with huge debt payments were getting crushed. Foreclosure signs started popping up on country roads. Sarah's farm was an island of stability. She had no debt. Her fuel costs were low. Her repair costs were just the price of parts. She weathered the storm, and when it was over, she was stronger than ever. She bought another 500 acres from a corporate lender. Cash. Mr. Henderson had retired by then. He lived in a small house in town. He read the county newspaper every week. He saw her name, Sarah Schmidt, winning an award for soil conservation. Sarah Schmidt, elected to the board of the local co-op. Sarah Schmidt Farms, LLC, now one of the largest independent operators in the state. He would fold the paper and sit on his porch. And he would remember that day in his office. The tired father, the quiet daughter, the kindness he had offered, the certainty he had felt. He had been so sure he was right. He had been so sure he was protecting them from a terrible mistake. He had been so wrong. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind is the loneliest fight there is. You can't use anger. You can't use pride. All you can use is time, and work, and results, and decades. Year 25, 2018. The farm was over 2,500 acres. Her son, Leo, had come home from college with a degree in engineering. Her daughter, Clara, with a degree in agronomy. They didn't want to go work for a big company. They wanted to work on the farm. They saw what their mother had built. Not just a farm, but an idea. The idea that you didn't have to play the game. You could build your own. They brought new skills. Leo used computer-aided design to fabricate custom parts for the old gleaners, making them even more efficient. Clara used soil science to develop custom fertilizer blends, dramatically reducing their chemical use. They were blending the old ways with new knowledge, the wisdom of the ledger book with the power of the laptop. One afternoon, a shiny new truck pulled into the farmyard. A young man in a crisp polo shirt got out. He was from the John Deere dealership. He had an appointment to speak with the owner of Schmidt Farms. He walked into the office where Sarah was sitting with her father, Michael. Michael was in his 80s now, frail, but his eyes were sharp and full of pride. The young salesman's name was Ben. He was full of energy and enthusiasm. He didn't know the history. He just saw a big, successful farm, a potential customer. He launched into his presentation. He had a tablet with videos and charts. He talked about John Deere's new commitment to sustainability. He talked about their new line of fuel-efficient tractors, their precision agriculture technology. He showed them a picture of the new S700 series combine, a technological marvel. It could practically drive itself. The price was over $500,000. He had a special offer for them, a leasing program designed for forward-thinking farmers like them. He was confident, he was polished, he was certain. Sarah listened patiently. She let him finish. When he was done, she didn't say anything about the price or the technology. She opened a drawer in her desk. She pulled out an old, faded photograph. She slid it across the desk to Ben. It was a picture of her and her father, standing in front of the John Deere dealership. She was 22 years old. She looked young and scared. Ben looked at the photo, confused. Sarah said, "That was taken 30 years ago. The salesman's name was Mr. Henderson, a good man. He offered us a combine for $200,000. He told us we would fail if we didn't buy it. He said he was trying to protect us." Ben stared at the photo. He was speechless. Sarah's voice was not angry. It was not triumphant. It was quiet and devastating. She said, "Your company's kindness almost destroyed us. Mr. Henderson's certainty about our limits was more dangerous than any drought, any flood, any plague of insects, because he made my own father doubt me, and that is a hard thing to overcome." She leaned forward. She said, "We don't need your help. We don't need your technology, and we don't need your debt. We built this farm on a different principle." Ben just nodded. He packed up his tablet. He shook her hand, and he left. As he drove away, he looked at the line of old silver combines, gleaming in the sun, and for the first time in his life, he questioned what he was selling. That is the reckoning. Not a shout, but a quiet truth, delivered across a desk, 30 years in the making. But that's not the end of the story, because a legacy is not what you build for yourself. It's what you build for others. Sarah wasn't just building a farm. She was building a blueprint. In 2019, she formalized what she had been doing for years. She started a nonprofit foundation. She called it the Gleaner Project. The mission was simple: to help young farmers get started without crippling debt. She used the farm's profits to buy up old, broken-down equipment from the 70s and 80s, combines, tractors, planters. She would find young, aspiring farmers, kids who grew up on farms but were priced out, kids with fire in their eyes and grease under their fingernails. She didn't give them a handout. She gave them a space in her workshop. She gave them access to her tools, her manuals, her knowledge. She taught them how to rebuild the machines themselves. She taught them how to weld, how to fabricate, how to be self-sufficient. When they were done, they owned the machine, outright, title in hand, no debt. The first year, she helped 3 young farmers. The next year, 5. By 2023, the Gleaner Project had helped over 50 young men and women start their own farms. 50 families who were not beholden to a bank. 50 operations that were resilient, sustainable, free. Her legacy wasn't in her acreage, it was in theirs. It was a ripple effect. A quiet rebellion against a system that said the only way to succeed was to be in debt. The local university started taking notice. Their agricultural department had always taught the corporate model. Bigger is better. Newer is necessary. They sent a professor out to Sarah's farm. He came expecting to see a quaint, nostalgic hobby farm. He saw a sophisticated, vertically integrated business. He saw the custom fabrication shop run by her son, Leo. He saw the soil science lab run by her daughter, Clara. He saw the fleet of perfectly maintained, highly modified silver machines. And he saw the balance sheets. The professor went back to the university and changed his curriculum. He added a course: Alternative Models of Farm Capitalization. The first case study was Schmidt Farms. The old ways were new again. In the main workshop on the farm, there is a wall. On that wall, mounted on a piece of polished barnwood, is a single worn ignition key. It's the key to that first Gleaner L2, the one she bought for $5,000 cash. Below it is a small brass plaque. engraved with 4 words: "The dirt is enough." Sometimes Leo, her son, will be in the shop late at night, designing a new part on his computer. He will walk over to the wall, he will touch the key, he will close his eyes, and he will remember the stories. The stories of the struggle, the doubt, the work, the quiet triumph. It is more than a key, it is a reminder that the most powerful innovations are sometimes born from refusal, from being denied access, from being forced to find your own way. The story of Sarah Schmidt is not really about a tractor. It's not about farming. It's about a universal truth. Right now, somewhere in the world, a young person with a powerful idea is being told no. They are being told they can't. They are being told they aren't ready. They aren't smart enough. They aren't capitalized enough. And the person telling them this is not a villain. They are a parent, a teacher, a boss, a banker, a friend. Someone who is genuinely, kindly, lovingly certain that they know the limits of another person's potential. That is the most dangerous limitation in the world, the one you can't fight with anger, the one you can only disprove with decades of work. The gap between who they tell you you are and who you know you can be. That gap is where legacies are born. If this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. The world needs more stories about the quiet ones, the ones who don't argue, the ones who just build a better way. Thank you for listening, and subscribe for more stories of those who were told they couldn't and did anyway.